Good afternoon, everybody. As I've told y'all before, I had gotten some cookbooks from an estate sale, and I was going to try to start cooking out of them and trying different recipes. Last night I spent, I don't know how long, going through this book right here, and I realized it's The Master of French Cooking. It's by Julia Child. So most of this stuff, it calls for wine, it calls for ingredients I don't have, it calls for expensive cuts of meat. So it's more like fancy French restaurants, what they have. I'm not fancy, and I try to cook things that you would have the ingredients at home, that you don't have to go buy stuff from. So I decided to start going through the other ones. Well, I found this recipe in the Hungarian recipes. I found this Hungarian Hamburgers, or Labdapecsenye. Labdapecsenye. I'm probably saying that wrong, and if you're Hungarian, I apologize. So it calls for things that I have, so I'm going to make this. It calls for a half a pound of ground beef. I have a little bit more than that, and plus I'm feeding a bunch of people, so I'm going to be basically doubling this recipe, or close to doubling. But it calls for ground beef, pork, white bread, eggs, salt, pepper, onion, sauteed onions, garlic. So I have all those things here. I'm going to saute my onions, and then at the very end I'm going to go ahead and throw my garlic in there, because as you can see, it doesn't really give a whole lot of direction here. So I'm going to just kind of do the best I can, get the ingredients together. Now it calls for ground pork, but if you've ever been to the store, ground pork, sometimes they have it, sometimes they don't. They always have sausage. So when when something calls for ground pork, honestly, I usually use pork sausage. I just think it adds extra flavor. To me, ground pork doesn't really have a whole lot of flavor, and I know that's not what the recipe calls for, but I want to make it to where, to my taste, or what I think would taste good. And again, I try to make stuff that has ingredients that you either have at home or you can run to any store and grab. So I'm going to get started with the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to saute the onions and the garlic like it calls for, and I'll be right back. All right, while the onions are sauteing, we're going to go ahead and move on to getting the bowl with the other ingredients ready. So once this is done, we can kind of put everything together. So you're going to take your eggs, and I'm going to use 3 eggs. The recipe calls for 2 for a pound of meat, and I'm using a little over, so I'm kind of, I'm not quite doubling it, but close. So you're going to whisk or beat your eggs. Let me get this mixed up, okay? You're supposed to mix that well. And then another thing I've never ever heard is it says to take 4 slices of bread and to wet it and then push out the water. So I'm going to do that, or try to see if I can, how that's going to work. Okay, so now I've wet the bread, and I'm going to try to just push out. Yeah, so I'm going to just do that. I'm going to lay this over to the side because it says to tear this, and you're going to put this into the egg mixture. So yeah, I guess you just kind of, you just wet the bread and you just push out any excess water. Okay, so again, it doesn't give a whole lot of direction besides what the ingredients are, and once you've got them all done, you put them in a bowl together. So I'm going to, once you can saute your onions to whatever color you like. I like to, and I'm throwing the garlic in. It didn't really say to do that. It just said to mix it. So, but if I'm going to saute my onions, I'm going to go ahead and throw the garlic in there towards the end. But I like to saute my onions until they're brown, or they get clear, especially if I'm going to mix them into the meat and make it says, they call them hamburger, but in the direction it says to make balls, which, to me that's not quite hamburgers, but hey, I'm going to follow it. I'm going to follow it because it's a new recipe and I'm trying something new. So let me get this finished sauteing, and then once it's done, I'm going to pull it out. You set it aside, and then we're going to get all the ingredients put together. Okay, so we're supposed to fry this and it says 3/4 pound of Crisco. I'm just putting some grease in the pan. So I'm going to get this stuff together. So once you beat your eggs, you're supposed to tear the bread into small pieces. So I'm just going to tear this bread. Once I get all the bread torn, you're just basically at this point you just add all the ingredients to the bowl, and it says mix with the fork, but I'm probably going to mix it with my hands to kind of get, so we can form balls. So let me get this finished, broke up. I'll be right back. Okay, I got all the ingredients in there except the salt and pepper. So I'm going to put some pepper in there. And this is going to be to taste. Again, it's kind of hard when I've never made this recipe, so and I'm going to use my hands. It said to do this with a fork, which, I mean, I don't know. I don't know how you really get everything kind of mixed together and combined. And I don't know really the point of wetting the bread first instead of just putting it in the egg and getting it wet that way. But maybe if there is someone in here who has made this before, who is Hungarian, if you could kind of give me a hint on that, on what the purpose was. But also, if I'm doing this correctly, I know I didn't use regular pork. I did use sausage. But I had the sausage on hand, so I'm one to, if you've got something on hand that you can substitute and you like, then go for it, So let me get this finished and I'll be right back. So it says once you get everything mixed together, you form it into medium-sized balls. So, and it said gently. So I guess this would be medium size here. And you're supposed to fry it gently. So like I said, I'm gonna get this gently, make balls in here and fry it gently. I've got this on a medium heat. I've had it turned up to get the grease hot, but I'm gonna turn this down to a medium low so that I can get them all in here and get it cooked slowly like it said. So I'll be right back. Okay, so that didn't take up all of the meat, so I'm going to be doing 2 batches. I did turn the fire back up because it really stopped frying. So I've got it now at about a medium high, and it says to turn them until all sides are brown and they're all cooked. So wish me luck. Okay, so yep, I made the balls too big. So this one, because you're supposed to be able to roll them around and brown them on every side, but as you can see, they were big, so they kind of flattened out. But this one is ready. I'm going to let it cool just a minute while I finish up these, and I'm going to go ahead and taste it, because all I'm going to do with this is I'm going to make some French fries to go with it. So I'm going to give this a taste and let y'all know. Okay, so you can see it is cooked all the way through, so I'm going to give this a taste, let y'all know. It's good. I could have used more salt, honestly. But I mean, it tastes like because I did use the hot sausage, it kind of tastes like a spicy meatball. If I had used pork, for sure I would put more salt and pepper in here. But I mean, it's good. I'm going to make some fries with it, and we're going to have a nice dinner with something a little bit different than I normally make. So if y'all have any questions, let me know. If not, enjoy, y'all.